Hi, it's MA, and I want to talk about, I know there's been a lot of decluttering videos and videos about decks that people have brought in and maybe had some regrets about, and I know I've made some or mentioned that I've bought things where I should have known better. But I'd like to talk about a deck, or if you'd like to, talk about any decks that you bought that you expected not to like, um, or you, and then ended up having a much different reaction to than you thought. And the deck I'm going to specifically talk about is the DruidCraft Tarot. Now, this is a deck I had no intention of buying, for one thing, or for a list of things. Let's see, I'm going to say it nicely, right? So it's this kind of backward looking, good old times, bit romanticized, which I can maybe look at as a problem for me if I'm asking myself, do I feel the need to enter an old-timey world where there's only white people and it's very heteronormative? And these are things I am generally not putting in my deck collection. But then Book Outlet had remainder copies for, like, I think I paid either 11 or 12 US dollars. And I thought, why the heck not? People had mentioned how good the book is. And I really don't like the actual art itself. I'm not saying anything bad about the art. It's just this whole vibe of, it's something I have told myself is not appealing to me. It's something I've told myself I'm not interested. It's something I've told myself is outside my aesthetic boundaries. And I wanted to just pick up a copy, have a look at the book. I was aware of some of the comments people have made about the cardstock and the size of the cards, and I figured I could work on modifications and kind of trash the deck, and it would most likely end up with me throwing the thing away because I ruined it. Okay, so that was my going in phase. And what I'm now making myself think about is that question of aesthetic boundaries and about telling myself this story. I know in connection with some of the deck decluttering, there's been talk about decks that were bought because they wanted to satisfy an aspirational version of yourself. And I think maybe I have the opposite thing here, where my aspirational self doesn't own this deck and doesn't enjoy this deck and doesn't connect to this deck. So, there's some unpacking for me to do there, and I will freely admit this. So anyway, so I've got the deck. As people know, the cards are giant. It's like holding, I don't know, a pizza box in your hands. So I cut the borders off. At first I left the titles, but I didn't like it being asymmetric, so I went ahead and chopped off the titles. So now I'm left with the deck with no titles. So maybe I can start using the deck. But no, I'm like, well, it's slippery and the backs are so shiny. I still don't like it. So at this point, I started to, sand the decks down with a block to try to scuff them up. And then I thought they looked stupid that way. But then I started kind of rubbing bits of it over again with Distress ink. I don't know. I think I wanted to make it look like they had been buried or a horse ran over them. And then, well, I still didn't like it that much. Then I decided to edge it, and I edged it in green, but it looked too green and I didn't like it. Then I went back over the green with, I guess, another darker distressing pad, so it looked a little grungier. And I will say I did not do the best trimming job, even though I use a guillotine and measurements. It's not really shuffleable anymore. When I did the edging, I was getting smears. Oh, and it bled, like you can see the bleeding, like the green bled under the images. And this whole time, every time I did something else to it, I felt like I wanted to be along a track where I was going to get to the point where I could finally say, well, that's it. You've ruined the deck. And I would have to chuck it out. And at some point, I just have to laugh and say, I have brought this deck into my home, and now I'm willfully avoiding it. What is happening here? What am I doing? So it's a little bit funny. It's, when we say shadow work, I think, I have some stuff to unpack here and go look at. One thing I can say is pretty obvious to me. So I'm American. My family has, been on this continent for several hundred years. I have the privilege of access to a lot of genealogical information and other historical records, so I know exactly where many of them came from and when and all that kinds of stuff, which is its own issue. But the weird thing is, yeah, I am overwhelmingly by heritage British Isles, and yet I still am for some reason wishing myself to be repelled by this deck. And again, but I keep doing things that bond myself more to it. And when I say bond, I mean, physically touching it. And I cut the titles off, but I did that before I had really looked at the deck very hard. So then I had to go back through and say, can I even tell what card this is now? Like, who's this? I don't even remember. Is this a king or is it a major? I don't really remember. Okay, well, it's on a horse. It's probably a knight. So the cards were not clear to me. So then I had to go back through it. So the next thing you know, like, here I am, like, touching this deck and touching the deck and touching the deck. So now I don't know how to feel about the deck. I actually pulled a card. I pulled a couple of cards last night, but one of the cards I said, why I am avoiding you, why I am avoiding this deck. And I got this Knight of Pentacles, or Prince, I guess they call them in this deck. See, I don't have the titles, so I'm going to even get it wrong. So I pulled this person here. And the first thing I notice is the shield. And this person, I'm thinking, okay, I'm avoiding this deck because I'm shielding myself from something. I'm trying to shield myself. Now, what that is, I don't know the answer to yet. But also the way this shield is being held, it's almost obscuring part of their face. So it's this protection, undertaking this act of protection that at the same time is leaving you with an incomplete view or an incomplete vision, and it's slowing down your progress. So I guess I got some more stuff to unpack here. I do have to laugh at myself, but I think this is I'd love to hear if anybody else has a case of, I don't know what to call it, a reverse aspirational deck, like a deck you really wanted to dislike and you were drawn to it and are not quite sure what to make of your relationship yet, or your relationship changed and you ended up really loving it. Because to me, I know a lot of people love this deck, and again, I don't really dislike anything about it, except to me, this deck is just so, it's not me. I find myself wanting to say, oh, this deck is so not me. And like this person with the shield and the pentacle, there's something about me wanting to have a definition that says, oh, this is me, this is not me, I am not this thing, I'm not this thing, that is worth exploring for sure. And also at the same time, kind of so obvious that it makes me laugh. So anyway, if anyone has a similar experience, I can't quite figure out a hashtag to call this. But anyway, would love to hear if anyone else has any of these reverse aspirational self deck experiences. Thanks. Bye.